subcommittee. Before we start, I need to make a few housekeeping announcements. The meeting is live streamed onto the YouTube channel. Members, officers and members of the public are welcome to wear their face masks if they wish. Firstly, there are no planned fire alarm tests today. If you hear a fire alarm, leave by the nearest fire exit. Make your way to the agreed assembly point, which is St John's Churchyard up George Street. Council security staff will be available to direct you. Public toilets are located by the main reception area. This is a no smoking building. Please ensure you do not smoke on the premises. Please switch off your mobile phone or put your phone to silent while the meeting is in progress in the committee room. Members of the subcommittee will not access the internet, send or receive emails, text messages or tweets concerning the business of the subcommittee. The code for accessing Southwark Council free Wi-Fi is capital F, small r, 33, capital W, lowercase I-F-I, exclamation mark. I'd ask you to please be considerate towards other people in the room and take care not to disturb the proceedings. I would also like to remind speakers to use their microphone when speaking, as only the audio from the microphones is captured on the live stream, and not to place your mobile device next to the microphone, as they can interfere. I would now like the officers to introduce themselves and explain their roles in the meeting. Firstly, the planning officers. Dennis.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Dennis Ombreme. I'm Senior Planning Officer at today's meeting. I'm going to present Director of Planning for the business of this meeting, guide members and officers.
Thank you. Abby?
My name is Abby McGovern. I am the planning officer for Addon 7.1 around at 1 acre.
Kiara?
Thanks, Mary. Kira to the case officer zone 7.2
Winnie?
Hi, I'm Winnie. I'm presenting the item 7.3, Campbell Lawn Tennis Club in Danish Common.
Now the legal officer, Margaret.
Good evening, Chair. My name is Margaret Foley. I'm the legal officer for this subcommittee. My role is to advise members of subcommittee on planning legislation and legal matters related to planning, and to deputise for the monitoring officer. Tonight I have my colleague Sophie Chapman with me, who's observing the meeting for training purposes.
Clerk for the meeting, Gerald.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Gerald Gola. I'm one of the constitutional officers here at Southwark, and I am also the clerk for the subcommittee. I'm here to minute the meeting and to advise on the procedure for decision making and for hearing the items.
Sonia is with us as well. What's your role tonight, Sonia?
I'm Sonia Watson. I'm group manager for the Major New Homes team, and I'm here in supervisory and just help with presentation if needed.
Thank you. Are there any apologies for absence or lateness?
Yes, Chair. For absence, Councillor Natasha and Nene.
Item 3, confirmation of voting members. Please will all the voting members of the committee indicate by raising their hands. Thank you. Item 4, disclosure of members' interests and dispensations. Does any member wish to declare any interest or dispensation in respect to any item or issue to be considered at this meeting? No? Interest or dispensation. Item 5, notification of any items of business which the Chair deems urgent. The following additional documents have been circulated prior to the meeting: the members' pack and the addendum report. Item 6, minutes. Can we approve the minutes of the previous meeting held on the 21st of September 2022, pages 1 to 5 on the agenda? Thank you. Item 7, development management. The following planning guidance conduct of meetings. The next item on the agenda is the determination of development management planning applications. Before we proceed to the business, I would like to just outline the guidance on the conduct of business. We will hear from the officer who will present the report, outline the recommendations and answer any questions or clarify any issues raised by members of the subcommittee. Any representatives present that wish to speak can address the subcommittee for 3 minutes, which will be taken in the following order. One spokesperson representing any objectors to the application, followed by the applicant or applicant's agent, one person representing any supporters of the application who lives within 100 metres of the development site, and finally a ward council representing those affected by the proposed development. Each speaker should restrict their comments to the planning aspects of the application. At the end of each representation, the subcommittee may ask questions of the presenter. After receiving all submissions, the subcommittee will debate the application and consider the recommendations. This is a council subcommittee meeting which is open to the public. There should be no interruptions from the audience. Finally, although the planning subcommittee comprises members of different political parties, we are not politically linked. The decisions we make today are in accordance with the council's planning policy and based on information contained in the relevant reports and the addendum report and any verbal submissions made today. How we approach these applications is set out in the development management report as item 7. And if members are happy to note that report, we will move on to consider the planning applications.
Agreed.
Thank you. Item 7.1, land at 1A Dockham Hill, application number 20/AP/0359, pages 10 to 61 of the main agenda pack, members pack and addendum report, pages 1 to 2. Abby.
Thank you, Chair. So item 7.1 is an application at land at 1A Dockham Hill. It's for the erection of a 6-storey building comprising 31 self-contained residential units, which are 14 one-bed, 12 two-bed and 5 four-bed, hard and soft landscaping, communal amenity space, cycle storage and other associated works. Just initially I'd like to draw your attention to the addendum. There's just an update to paragraph 26 where there's a typo. It should have said 4 units of social rent, but the report states 5. And just an update to the energy and sustainability section. In the report I have stated that the scheme in terms of being green would just include PV panels, but there's also air source heat pumps being provided. So that's everything on the addendum. So on the screen here you can see the site location plan outlined in red. And this is an aerial view of the site. And this is the proposed site plan with the proposed building in place. Just an overview, the existing site is vacant. There was a residential property on site which was demolished, and the proposal is for 31 new homes, including 35% affordable housing based on habitable rooms. So this is 5 4-bed duplexes, which as I just mentioned, that's 4 social and 1 intermediate. The housing mix is 14 one-bed, 12 two-bed and 5 4-beds. There are private gardens and balconies, 153.5 square metres of communal amenity space and a financial contribution for play space. Here are a couple of photographs of the site. So the top photo is within the site, and the bottom photo is from Dog Kennel Hill at the moment. We've received 9 comments in response to this application, including 5 in objection and 4 neutral. The responses related to the development being out of character with the surrounding area, inappropriate height and massing, being too close to the site boundary, impacts on daylight and sunlight, a lack of family housing, the quantity of affordable housing, refuse storage arrangements, impact on parking and public transport and surfacing. So a bit of background on the site. There was an application in 2005 for the demolition of the existing house and the erection of a 4-storey building with 12 private residential units. So this was allowed on appeal. The council have raised no objection to the principle of development, but had concerns around the proximity of the building to the boundary with the adjacent land. In 2010, planning permission was granted for the erection of a 5-storey building for 9 3-bedroom houses. This scheme has been implemented and this is confirmed by a lawful development certificate, so the elevation on the screen shows what can be implemented. And then in 2017 there was an application for a 6-storey building, including basement, bike storage by 22 new dwellings. This was dismissed at appeal due to the lack of affordable housing. And here's just an image of the proposed scheme that's in front of you today. In terms of the quality of accommodation, 31 new homes, and there will be 5 4-bedroom duplexes within this. All of the new homes comply with the nationally described space standards in terms of the gross internal area and individual room sizes. All of the homes have the dual aspect as well, and the duplexes at ground and first floor have 20 square metre gardens, and the flats have 6 to 9 square metre balconies, with 153.5 square metres of communal amenity space. So the minor shortfall in the balconies for the smaller flats would be offset within the communal amenity space. 35% affordable housing based on capital rooms, so it's the 5 4-bedroom duplexes, and this would be secured by our Section 106 legal agreement, which would also include early and late stage viability reviews and the monitoring of the affordable units on site. Here is a plan of the ground floor, so you can see the open plan living spaces of the duplex units with their rear gardens as well. And then on the first floor, the 4 bedrooms for each of those units, and then an additional 1-bedroom flat on the right there, unit 7. On the upper floors, it's the mix of 1 and 2 bedroom private flats, so this is the 2nd floor, the 3rd floor, and the 4th floor. All of the flats will be accessed from the deck access, which you can see at the top of the plan there. And the 5th floor, and then this is the roof plan, which includes the PVs. 1 second, sorry.
Okay, we're going to have to soldier on there. Okay, so we're up to page 21 on the... You can say what page you're on. You can say next slide.
Thank you, Jen. So yeah, picking up from page 21 on the design. The application is for a 5-storey block of residential units, and it's set perpendicular to Dog Kennel Hill. The proposed building envelope, so the height, scale and massing of the scheme, is the same as the previous application on site, the 2017 one. However, although it was refused, there were no issues raised with the design, so it's very similar in height, scale and massing to that. It's also very similar to the 2010 scheme, which has permission and can be implemented. There was an additional story of accommodation achieved on this scheme and the 2017 scheme, just through analysis of the ground levels and making use of that. The building is set in at ground and first floors, so this separates the duplex units from the flats above. It is approximately 25 metres from the boundary of the Camberwell Grove conservation area. The proposed development would be in keeping with the wider neighbourhood character and would not harm the setting of the conservation area, which it wouldn't really be seen within. There's a larger scheme, Steventon House, within the boundary, separating the two sites. Conditions have been recommended for material samples, details of refuse storage and hardness of landscaping. So just going over to page 22, you've got the south-east elevation. So these are the front doors of the duplex units, and you can see the stair core on the right-hand side of the elevation. The north-east elevation on page 23 is the development from Dog Kennel Hill. Again, you can see the stair core here and the entrance to the site. Page 24 is the northeast elevation in context, so looking at the neighbouring schemes along Dog Kennel Hill, including number 8 Dog Kennel Hill to the left, another more recent development in the middle, and 2 sets of semi-detached properties. Page 25 is the proposed southwest elevation, so this is the other side of the rear from Dog Kennel Hill. And again, you can see this in context on page 26, so the rear of all of the properties along Dog Kennel Hill, and within the context of the other neighbouring properties across the road. So page 27 shows an image from the daylight and sunlight assessment submitted, which includes all of the key neighbouring buildings. So you've got Dog Kennel Hill Primary School across Dog Kennel Hill, Mary Seacole Court, Walcott House, and then Steventon House, which was recently granted planning permission, and this shows the consented scheme. And then the proposed development is the one in blue. Moving on to page 28, this discusses the overlooking, outlook and sense of enclosure. So the relationship to the neighbouring buildings have already been established under the consented scheme, which again, similar footprint, height, scale, massing. Mary Seacole Court across Dog Kennel Hill is over 24 metres away, so this exceeds minimum policy requirements in our residential design standards. Number 1 Dog Kennel Hill is the neighbouring property just further down Dog Kennel Hill. This would be situated around 6 metres to the south of the development and has a total of 4 windows fronting the application site. Again, this relationship has already been established, and the ground floor rooms are non-habitable rooms. The separation distance to the consented scheme at Steventon House is approximately 13 metres at ground floor and slightly more above. The internal layout of the scheme has been arranged to minimise overlooking with dual aspect living spaces, and the potential of overlooking is also mitigated with the external walkways to the front of the building and a condition for boundary treatment at ground floor. Page 29 looks at the daylight and sunlight impacts of the development. all of the neighbouring properties comply with DRE guidelines with the exception of number 1 Dog Kennel Hill and Sealington House. So this table on page 29 shows the vertical sky component and daylight distribution of the windows and rooms within 1 Dog Kennel Hill with the proposed development in place. This shows that 4 windows were found to meet BRE guidelines in terms of vertical sky component. These are 2 windows at ground floor which serve non-habitable rooms. So the floor plan on this page shows the 2 windows outlined in red. So it's a sort of hallway area and a downstairs toilet. And then 1 window at first floor and 1 window at second floor, which are likely bedrooms. The overall daylight distribution of both of these rooms comply with BRE guidance, so although 2 windows would be slightly impacted in terms of their vertical sky component, the overall rooms would still comply. Page 30 looks at the impacts on Sealington House. So again, the table shows the vertical sky component and daylight distribution. So 8 windows fail to comply with BRE guidelines in terms of the vertical sky component. Again, all of the windows that are affected are situated within rooms that would still comply with daylight distribution. So these are all living spaces. We've got a mixture of open plan living kitchen diners or living diners. The impacts aren't generally far beyond BRE guidelines, and yes, so the daylight distribution of the rooms do comply. So overall there would be some impacts in terms of daylight on 2 properties, but they would not adversely impact on them. In terms of landscaping, on page 31, there is 153.5 square metres of communal amenity space proposed. You can see this area on the landscaping plan shown. There will be a financial contribution of £24,039.20 for play space in accordance with the GLA calculator. There are a couple of schemes nearby, so Champion Hill Estate and Dog Kennel Hill Adventure Playground, which are currently undergoing improvements, and this money is to be used towards those. The urban green impact of the site would be 0.49, which exceeds the 0.4 London Plan target. There would be the provision of an intense biodiversity roof, flower-rich planting on site, hedges, grassland and trees. Conditions have been recommended for arboricultural monitoring, hard and soft landscaping, biodiversity green roof, 3 Swift bricks and 2 back tubes. Page 32, looking at transport, the development would be car-free. Future occupiers would be restricted from obtaining parking permits within the Dog Kennel Hill controlled parking zone, and this would be secured via legal agreement. Policy complying cycle storage is proposed, so that's 56 long stay spaces and 1 short stay. External refuse is also proposed, and you can see the locations of these on the plan there, highlighted in purple. And section 278 works will be secured via Section 106 agreement. Page 33, in terms of energy, to be lean, the proposed development would make efficient use of construction materials, energy, lighting and smart energy meters, and this would achieve a 9.36% reduction over Part L of building regulations. And then in terms of being clean, the proposed scheme would provide 96 PVs at roof level and the use of air source heat pumps. This would achieve 67.7% reduction, equating to a total 79.96% reduction over Part L. The remainder to meet policy requirements of £29,127 would be secured via Section 106 agreement. Pages 34 and 35 look at the planning obligations that would be secured through this development. So that's the 35% affordable housing to be delivered on site, a monitoring fee and the monitoring of the units to ensure that they remain affordable in perpetuity, early and late stage viability review mechanism, a £99,000 financial contribution for the lack of wheelchair accessible housing on site, a £24,039.20 financial contribution for play space, the removal of parking permit rights in the controlled parking zone, Section 278 works to include repaving the footway and reinstating redundant crossovers, the financial contribution of £29,127 for carbon offset, and the monitoring, reporting and verifying of energy performance to meet the BC requirement of the London Plan. Page 36 and 37 are some visuals of the scheme, both from Dog Kennel Hill, more of a bird's eye view in page 36. And then to conclude on page 38, the proposed development will provide 31 new homes, including 5 4-bedroom affordable homes, policy compliant internal and external accommodation, and it will secure Section 106 planning obligations. It is therefore recommended that planning permission be granted subject to the conditions set out in the committee report and the completion of a Section 106 legal agreement. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from the officer? Councillor Livingston.
Thank you. Yes, I just wanted to understand the impact of the development on the new homes we agreed at the previous meeting at Stevenson House. First of all, I note the report talks about the daylight impact. Do we know if there's any sunlight impact on those homes? I know the diagram that we had showing the impact of sunlight suggested that it was minimal, but just if we had any figures at all, if there is anything there about any windows that were affected by a significant reduction in sunlight. The second question, which was related, was really the visuals we've got show lots of views around this building, but the one elevation, and that's something that we don't appear to have, and this is one of the very first ones, was the view from the north and getting that north elevation. So that view that the new residents at Seekington would see of the building as well, because that to me wasn't very clear. And in particular about the access to the flats, is that enclosed or is it an open balcony?
Thank you. I'll answer the last question first. So it's an external walkway on the upper floors, so open to the external, and then the staircase as well that you can see on the
Sunlight.
sunlight. If you just bear with me 1 second, I will. Can I come back to you on this on that? is there any other questions in the meantime?
And we haven't got a picture with from the other direction, have we? The staircase doors on the right. I haven't seen one from the other side. Can I ask another question? I can't remember the child yield. How many children are there in this development? Roughly.
Chair, I note that the play space shortfall issues are addressed at paragraph 46. The expected child yield is 15.9, and therefore 159.2 square metres of play space should be provided.
Okay, Councillor Harper.
I can wait if you need some time. No. I was just wondering about the cycle storage. I did a little bit of maths, which was kind of guesstimating, but given that it's not going to be any car parking space, should everyone who lives there, and it be kind of a very well lived in development, want a bicycle, there would need to be a lot more storage. Is there any space on the site should that ever become an issue, as kind of trying to show more and more people are cycling?
Yes, so the cycle storage that is to be provided is policy compliant. So I think there were 56 in total. This is in an external cycle storage area within the communal amenity space, so it's not like constrained within the ground floor or anything. So if it was the case that they needed to provide more, there would be space to do that.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Anyone else? Councillor Batson?
Thank you, Chair. I had a question about the proportion of rooms and the number of family-sized homes with 4 bedrooms. So in the application it says 54% of the homes would have 2 or more bedrooms and 60% of the homes would be family-sized homes, 4 bedrooms. But policy P2 and Southwark plan says that we need a minimum of 60% and a minimum of 25% with family-sized homes. And it kind of goes on to say, given the other benefits of this scheme, we feel it should be approved. It kind of feels like we're cutting a bit of a corner there and kind of asking us to kind of work around that policy. So I suppose my question is, how was that considered and why are we asking to ignore that particular policy?
Thank you for your question. So the original scheme that was submitted was, it was a 2020 scheme, I believe it was 28 units in total. This had a policy compliant housing mix at the time. We then had viability negotiations with the applicant, and in order to secure the 35% affordable housing, we came to the conclusion with the applicant and our viability consultant that the best way to do that was through reducing the mix, but we then agreed that the larger units would be 4-bed rather than 3-bed. So that was the approach taken. So you're correct that there is a shortfall in the percentage of family-sized homes, but on balance, our recommendation is, given the other benefits of the scheme and the fact that we have achieved 85% affordable housing, that we recommend that it should be approved on that basis. But we acknowledge that there is a shortfall.
I think the desirability of the 4-bedroom sort of adds a bit of extra weight. Can I ask if we've got an RP?
The applicant has advised that they have made contact with an RP that are willing to take on the units. The applicant might be willing to tap into that a bit more.
Okay, I'll ask the applicant. Any other questions? Okay, are there any objectors in the room to this planning application? Can we then have the applicant or applicant's agent? Okay. The microphone is the single. Can you first introduce yourself and say who you work for? And after that, I'll give you 3 minutes to speak.
Thank you, Chair. So my name is Jonathan Paley, and I'm an architect who works with Southwark, and I'm representing the applicant in his land edition.
Okay, you have your 3 minutes. You're ready.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, members, for the opportunity to speak. We've been working closely with officers to ensure the latest proposals for the site align as much as possible with the policy ambitions set out in the latest Southwark plan. The process have evolved since 2020 when the submission was first made, and to respond positively to feedback of officers. So we've seen a significant increase in the uplift of affordable housing, and we've also changed the outlook of principal living areas to minimise the overlook to the development plans and suiting to house as they evolved. We fully support the officer's recommendation to approve the application, and mostly big has been outlined already, but I can kind of repeat the main ones. So 35% affordable housing, of which 80% will be social rent. All those affordable homes will be 4-bed maisonettes, which is the most in the category recognised in the Southwark plan. We've also made sure those homes have got 20 square metres of amenity each privately, but also they're right adjacent to the communal amenity area, which is almost 3 times the recommended minimum in the Southwark plan. All the proposed homes, both private and affordable, will be dual aspect. They all meet the nationally described space standards. We've tried to maintain throughout the high quality use of materials, but we've also responded to kind of evolving climate with improved energy efficiency measures on the thermal envelope, and we've also improved air source heat pumps and additional PV to create 75% reduction in carbon. Further promoting kind of sustainable targets, we've made the schemes car-free, and we've enhanced planting and biodiversity to achieve a high urban green factor beyond the minimum target. So in summary, comparing this to the previous scheme that was that's been implemented on site, this one delivers affordable homes, whereas that one did not. There's also community infrastructure, levy payments, and Section 106 contributions, which all that other scheme did not provide. While we've also managed to maintain the design qualities of that permission and improve the environmental performance. So very much hope you will support the application tonight, and I can try and answer some of those questions set out earlier, and the others you might have. Thank you.
Thank you. Good time. Who would like to kick off? Your cycle. I'll ask the cycle provision. Is there
So the cycle storage that's been designed is trying to make it not too high on the boundary with number 1 hill, so they are kind of semi-vertical stands, they're not too tiered. Abby's right, there's not really a limit to how long we could extend that. We kind of met the policy requirement on that, but towards the end, I think we got conditioned to discharge all details of the cycle storage, so we did look into additional provisions.
Are you willing to share your RP with us?
So I understand the applicant has got an existing relationship with Hexagon Housing, but they also, they, I think it's 28 have been, we've sent out requests for them, 28 so far.
So you've asked 28 RPs? None of them have said they'll have it?
Well, it would be, we only just recently found out the application has been recommended for approval, so these went out quite recently.
But Hexagon may be interested.
The hope is that we're still waiting a decision, hopefully, to advance. I'm not actually involved in those direct negotiations, so as much as I can tell you that those conversations will start.
I've got the master switch here. Any other questions? Councillor Livingston.
Thank you. Yeah, that's just following on from my earlier question. So we ascertained that the access is via its external balconies, sort of deck access. What's the material that the balconies is going to be made of? So again, I'm trying to look at what the impact is on the Stevenson House decision. So to understand, is that a solid balcony? Is it sort of metal, perforated metal, or is it sort of solid walls? It's not very clear from the diagrams. So really just to understand that.
So what's on the drawings at the moment is open railway balconies. The reason that walkways were beneficial with the Stevenson House is that they were 1.5 metres set. Gives you 1.5 metre setback of your kind of principal living areas towards Stevenson House. So it increases the overlook distance.
Image from Stevenson House.
This one, looking towards the, yes, exactly. Yeah. So you pass that way.
Is that in the
No, it isn't.
Thank you.
It's just the view from the other side.
But the balcony, the walkways don't overshoot your boundary.
So that outline is the cycle storage on the other side. From the adjoining side, from the Stevenson House. Right, so that's the boundary of the Stevenson House that goes up and down, which is what their cycle storage.
It's entirely within the red line of the site.
Sorry, can we have one meeting, please? Sorry, can you repeat that?
Yeah, the extent of the building is entirely inside the red title line.
Just wait for that to come. You happy with that, Councillor Livingston?
Thank you very much. Yes, so it's effectively that's very meters at the moment. Thank you. That's very helpful.
So the railings at the bottom have got a castellation.
That's Stevenson House. So what you're doing is you're looking at
On the land where the garages are. So then what you're looking at is, remember last time we talked about the cycle storage being on the boundary with this site, and we talked about they wanted to reduce the height, that's right. And we said we'd have a condition on there that we'd look at it and we'd let Southwark Construction engage with consultation with them. on that matter. But what you're looking at basically is Seepington, and that's the cycle storage and I can't remember what else was there, but the boundary treatment, if you like.
I'm a bit concerned that there's no play space and that 15 children will lack play space. Depends on how close the alternative is, which I shall ask the Ward Council. Any other questions for the applicant? Thank you very much for your presentation. Are there any supporters in the room who wish to speak? So we'll move on to the Ward Councillor, Champion Hill. So if you introduce yourself to the tape, and then I'll give you 3 minutes when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Councillor Sarah King, and I'm one of the ward councillors for Champion Hill. Shall I kick off? I'm sure it won't take me 3 minutes. I am really, I promise not to be a permanent feature of this subcommittee. I'm really conscious that I need to keep to the planning points of this application. So I hope to do that, and I'm conscious that if I wander off, that I can be called back. There are, I suppose the key bit for me here with this application is there's already a planning context for it, which officers have made very clear in terms of the parameters of what we're looking at in terms of height. There isn't a huge volume of objectors, but there are some quite strong concerns from residents who live close by, and in particular the Residents Association that represents the Grove Lane residents. Their concerns are varied, and some of them are already dismissed in terms of kind of height and the precedent set by the existing planning permissions for the site. The one I have a lot of sympathy for them on, though, is around the management of construction on site if you grant planning permission for this tonight. There has been building work, the small building, kind of between all the blocks, that's recently developed, would result in quite a significant amount of casework about the construction on site, and particularly debris, mud in the road, which is a pavement, a bus lane, a cycle lane, and a road. It's very hard. It's very difficult to expect people to cross and go down the other side of Dog Kennel Hill because it's a very wide road. And so, when looking at the conditions, I suppose I was hoping that we could strengthen those and actually possibly ask the applicant to commit to some actual definite resident engagement around construction, because I think the last management plan for the previous application wasn't fit for purpose in terms of what it resulted in terms of casework, in terms of disruption. And I don't believe there's been any community consultation on this application, and I think it would go quite a long way in terms of strengthening the relationship between the developer and residents if that was something we could specify in a condition. I'm happy to answer questions about play space if that's helpful.
Thank you. Do you feel that there is a need for play space within the development?
I'm disappointed there's not play space within the development. I think you could have designed a scheme that did have play space within the development. I would be disappointed if a contribution went towards a scheme that the council is already committed to delivering within the Champion Hill estate. It's relatively close by. I'd have preferred to have seen it within it. I think it would be odd to fund something that the council has already committed to the residents of my ward to deliver ourselves, to then have it paid for by someone else. I think the contribution should go on something additional, not something already in the pipeline. I have an idea on what that is as well.
You have an idea?
I do. I suppose if I ruled the world, I would direct it towards the Adventure Playground, because the Adventure Playground is going through a fundraising process to try and deliver their aspirations for
quite a substantial programme of redeveloping the actual play equipment and also the indoor facilities that they provide to other children. It is part funded through our capital programme, but only part funded, and they're in the middle of a fundraising exercise to try and find the other £600,000. But all of that was costed before inflation, so I'm sure they're after a lot more.
Any other questions from the council? No? Thank you very much. Can we have points of clarification for Abby? Can you tell us about any consultation that may happen when that money is spent for the play space? How does that work? And is there a construction management plan already in place? If not, well, can that be strengthened in any way?
Thank you. There is a condition recommended, it's condition number 4 for a construction environmental management plan, which is on page 30 and 31 of the committee report. This is the standard construction management plan condition. If anything wanted to be added to that, then I would have the option to do so.
Councillor King, can you come forward again?
Yes.
Councillor Harford.
I'm so sorry for making you stand up again. Just you were saying you'd like to see more of a condition built into the kind of conditions. Having read through the condition 4, have you seen condition 4?
So I think condition 4 lists a number of examples of how the applicant might want to go about its resident engagement. I would prefer to see something that committed the developer to having to engage face-to-face with residents at least once. I think allowing it open-ended in terms of providing examples allows the applicant to land at a leaflet and a phone number rather than a commitment to meet with, organise a meeting to talk to residents about the impact of development when it takes place, assuming it takes place. I'd also really like it to make a commitment to engage with school and safer routes to schools and things like that. Now I'm just writing it, but
No, that's
does
fine.
that help?
I was
Yeah.
going to say, like, specifically what.
Yeah, so I suppose specifically it's about walking and cycling in the area. There's a TRA, there's the East Dulwich Estate TRA, there is the Grave Lane Residents Association, and there's the school, and I would say they're the main 3 kind of community stakeholders in that area who, and I obviously can't commit them to want to come to something, but I suppose it's giving a sense that it will be proactive rather than kind of leaflet-like.
And so that kind of a commitment that that the applicant initiates some sort of face-to-face meeting with those 3 major stakeholders.
That would be perfect. I'd be happy to attend, if that helps.
To help some planning.
I'm sure Esme would love to attend.
Can we condition that, or could we put it as an informative?
Thank you, Chair. Just looking at the wording of that condition, it does say that the Kemp shall oblige the applicant, developer and contractors to commit to current best practice with regard to construction site management. And then importantly it says, and to use all best endeavours. Now that's quite a high standard that has to be met. It is not just reasonable endeavours, it's saying that they have to do their very, very best to minimise off-site impacts. So depending on what current best practice is, the commitment that's mentioned is to arrange a direct and responsive site management contact. If what the councillor is requesting is that there is a more proactive element introduced into that, we would have to ensure that what we were asking was reasonable. And I think in the past what we have done is suggest that there is a requirement to at least consult with certain groups. And you've mentioned the school, I think Grove Lane Residents Association, East Dulwich Estate TRO. So I think we could add an additional wording to that condition, asking or requiring, in fact, the applicant to consult. I wouldn't be confident that we could actually require them to have face-to-face meetings, as I think that would have to be part and parcel of how they determine what should go into the written construction environmental management plan. Given that this is a pre-commencement condition, I'm not sure if those meetings, setting them up, etc., would lead to an unnecessary delay in implementation of the permission. But I certainly think that it would be reasonable within the test that we have to meet with conditions to require them to specifically consult with those named parties.
Thank you, Chair. It also occurred to me you were saying that there was a number of bits of casework. Dog kennel is on a slant. If there's mud and things around and children trying to get to school, it's no good going to your local councillor on the Saturday to say there was mud going down the road. They need to be able to contact somebody there and then and say you've got mud rolling down the road, or whatever it might be that is impinging people's movement. So is there any condition we can do that means they've got a big telephone number or something on their billboard outside that says, in case of any problems, please let us know immediately? Is that possible to do that?
Chair, that's included specifically as something that has to be part of the KEM, and that's a direct and responsive site management contact for nearby occupiers during demolition and or construction, and it specifies signage on hoardings, newsletters, residents' liaison meetings, etc.
So newsletters are mentioned again.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Any other questions for anybody?
Chair, could I just intervene on the point to do with the possible expenditure of the 106 monies, and a possible solution for that would be that we could specify in the Section 106 legal agreement that priority be given to, if possible, expenditure on the Flintshire playground. That is something that's been done in previous schemes, and it depends when that scheme comes forward and what other funding is being accessed, but there's no harm at all in saying that if members were minded to, that expenditure could be prioritised for a specific scheme.
Would that come back to the planning committee anyway?
It wouldn't come back to planning committee, Chair. It would be the wording of the agreement would simply raise everybody's awareness about the fact that we were hoping not exactly to ring fence, but to, if it were possible, to expend that money on a specific project if members are minded to request that is included in the 106 obligations.
Sounds like a good plan.
Yeah, great.
Any other questions? Thank you. So we'll move to anybody comments on this application? Anything anybody wishes to say?
Only just to welcome the, the 4-bedroom social housing, which, as you know, is something that I've been very keen to see, been banging on about this indeed, Chair, if you wish to put it quite that way, for a number of years, because I think as councillors, I think we all know how difficult it is when we've got people on coming to us who need a housing transfer, and 4 bedrooms are that real peak demand that we find hardest to find for residents that are seeking homes. So just to welcome that.
There's nothing further to say, and I will like to move to the vote. I would like to propose that we agree the officer's recommendations on page 13 of the agenda pack. 1. The planning permission be granted subject to the conditions set out in this report and the completion of a S106 legal agreement. 2. That in the event of the legal agreement is not signed by the 15th of March 2023, Director of Planning and Growth be authorised to refuse planning permission if appropriate for the reasons set out under paragraph 90 of the report. I need to add the condition.
Additional wording on condition 4, which requires the applicant to consult specifically with the school, the Grove Lane Residents Association, and, forgive me, East Dulwich Estate, TRA, and to require the Section 106 obligation relating to children's play space for those monies to be firstly prioritised for expenditure on the village playground.
That's okay, Joe? Anyone wish to second? Councillor Salmon? All those in favour? None. Thank you. Does anybody wish a comfort break? Yeah, we'll have a 5-minute comfort break. Okay, item 7.2, 97 Peckham Road, London SE 155LJ, application number 21/AP/4445, pages 62 to 104 of the main agenda pack, members pack, and addendum report, pages 2 to 3. Kiara. Let's hope the slides hold that.
Thank you. 21 AP 4445 on the Southwark construction of a new Part 4, Part 2, Part 2 story based worship with associated car parking landscaping. And first to draw your attention to the addendum report, there has been an update to noise and vibration condition following concern from residents that the original condition was to restrict the roof terrace to 10 p.m. We're now proposing that it's to 8 p.m. Since we've proposed this to residents have made further representations which they'd like noted at this point, which is that while one of them considers that while the 8 p.m. Restriction is a step in the right direction, still object to the roof terrace, and the second objects to the roof terrace would consider particularly disruptive over the weekend periods. It's not included in the addendum, but we would ask the committee if they would like to consider adding to that condition, so that the condition would say that the roof terrace is not to be used as a space for worship, which isn't its intention anyway. Its intention is like a breakout space for the users of the building. It's not to be used for worship ceremonies, but to help with residents' concern, if you would like to consider that condition. So the site is located on Peckham Road. It's bound by Peckham Road to the south, Moody Road to the east. To the north of the site is two-storey housing on Crane Street, and to the west is six-storey residential development, which is 95 Peckham Road. And the next nearest residential property is across the road, number 102 and Peckham Road. The site is currently vacant. Previously there was a workshop building, a two-storey workshop building on the site that was demolished in 2016. So the proposal is for a 1,212 square metre place of worship, which would include a 615-seat auditorium, which would include 120 square metre flexible space, intended to host Sunday school, and other community uses, and including considered office space, and the roof terrace is accessed by the second floor. It's 9 parking spaces are proposed, which would include 2 disabled bays and 3 EV charging points, and there's also 2 minibus parking bays proposed as well. So we received 23 comments, all of them were objections. In summary, the objections included the road is already highly congested and includes nearby schools and a medical centre. The church would further contribute to this. There's not enough parking proposed. It's too close to number 102 Peckham Road, which would result in a loss of privacy. There's no environmental report. It should have more community benefits. Too high, it would result in noise nuisance. It doesn't take into account the loss of light to neighbouring properties. It would block lighting to 95 Peckham Road and overlook roof lights and windows. Consultation include 95 Peckham Road. Concern over use of the roof terrace. Roof terrace should be limited to certain hours. There's a risk of light pollution, and proposal doesn't do enough to activate Moody Road. So there is significant site history on the site. So since 2013, a number of planning applications have been approved on the site. First was in 2013, which was 13 AP 2259, and that's to change the use of the site from its workshop use to a church. The second application was in 2016, 16 AP 1661, and that was to demolish the existing two-storey workshop building to replace it with a two-storey church. The most recent permission is 18 AP 0269, which is construction of a new Part 4, Part 3, Part 2 place of worship, associated car parking and landscaping. And in 2021 they received a certificate of lawfulness to confirm they started on site, so they have dug a trench and started piping, and so this is now an ex-ante permission, and we need to give this material consideration when deciding this application. So this image here shows you the kind of main differences between the ex-ante permission and the applications in front of you today. It's primarily to do with the scale and massing. So the orange outline is the scale of the 2018 application. So you can see it would be built out right to the boundary wall of Crane Street, and it would be higher as well at the rear. And these are just the 3D visuals of what was approved in 2018 by Subcommittee A. With regards to principle of development, the principle of the development has been established through multiple planning permissions since 2013. The site is located in an area of residential, commercial, and community uses, and the Southwark plan supports the provision of community facilities, and so it's therefore considered that the use is acceptable for the character of the area. And this is proposed ground floor plan, so it would be accessed via Peckham Road, and the main auditorium spaces on the ground floor with some ancillary office spaces. Proposed first floor would continue the auditorium space and again some ancillary office spaces. And the proposed second floor includes the Sunday school space and is where the roof terrace is accessed. These are the proposed elevations. So it's generally contemporary style and simple architecture. It would be primarily in main material would be concrete with a kind of smooth white finish. It's considered to be a high quality architecture for this area. external lighting is proposed, so you can see in the visuals, external lighting will be proposed on the ground floor and through what is to demonstrate a cross down the side of the building, but it is recommended that a condition is included to provide further details of this lighting in order to protect amenity of neighbours. With cycle and car parking, highlighting in green the 3 spaces for cycle parking, so there's 6 spaces to be provided to the front, 6 to the rear, and 20 spaces on the at the far rear of the site. This meets the London plan requirements, but does fall short of the Southwark plan. There are 9 car parking spaces to be provided along the eastern boundary of the site, along Newry Road. Again, that includes 2 disabled and 3 spaces with EV charging points. And then there's also 2 spaces for minibus, for 2 minibuses. The proposal is intending to provide 2 separate routes for minibus in order to get members of the congregation to and from the church. With regards to the numbers of parking spaces, the transport assessment has set out that 85% of those using the church use sustainable modes of transport. Using proportions that are set out of those who currently use the church, it would result in approximately 22 car users on a Sunday and 12 car users during the weekdays. But these journeys would all be taking place outside the peak hours. And in addition, it's also important to note that the church is currently operating temporarily outside from the Harris Academy School, which is less than 200 metres from the site. So the traffic impact already exists. With regards to landscaping and trees, there's 2 green roofs proposed. There's 6 trees, 4 to the front and 2 to the rear. The London plan sets out a UGF of 0.3 for commercial developments, and total community use and urban greening factor has been calculated at 0.23, which represents a significant improvement for the site, which is currently vacant and has no biodiversity or greening on the site at all presently. With regards to impacts on neighbours, all windows meet the BRE guidance for acceptable levels of BSC except for 1 roof light on a ground floor flat on 95 Peckham Road, which is highlighted on the screen. This room is a kitchen, living, dining room that is already served by 4 other windows, and the roof light is a secondary window. All windows meet the BRE guidance for NSL, no skyline. And all windows except this window would meet the guidance for sunlight also. Just for clarity, marked with an X is where the roof light is that would be impacted. An overshadowing assessment is also concluded that all of the neighbouring amenity spaces would receive the 2 hours of sunlight in line with BRE guidance, so all meets the guidance in that respect. In terms of overlooking and loss of privacy, Crane Street's properties are located to the north, so there's a 5-metre setback from the boundary wall, which is an improvement on the 2018 permission, which would build out right to the boundary wall. The nearest habitable room from the proposed development would be 12 metres, but the opportunity of overlooking would be from the roof terrace, which is over 30 metres from any habitable rooms. With 95 Peckham Road, there are no new windows looking into the site. There's no opportunity for overlooking and loss of privacy. And with number of 102 Peckham Road, which is across the highway, that's over 30 metres from the site boundary, which exceeds the residential design standards recommendation of 21 metres, and it's also over public highway. So there would be no overbearing sense of loss of privacy. A noise impact assessment was submitted, and that has been reviewed by our environmental protection team. It is recommended that we update one condition, condition 16, which at the moment talks about before the first commercial occupation of the development that the noise management plan is submitted to remove the word commercial so that it is just the first occupation of the development. But EPT have reviewed the noise impact assessment that has been submitted and considered there's the minimal noise impacts. The place of worship is well insulated, and also it's wouldn't have the same impact as something like a late night venue, because things like music wouldn't be something that'd be consistently played at high volumes. Notwithstanding this, there is a condition to restrict the hours of use of the church. So this would primarily be till 10 p.m. This is condition 18. This is condition 18. There would be 4 times a year, which is part of the religious calendar, where this would be until 12 p.m. and that's for the watch night service. And as mentioned, the roof terrace is to be conditioned separately to 8 p.m. and also for you to consider if you would want us to specify in that condition that the roof terrace is not to be used as a space for worship, and that it's only to be used as a breakout space for those who are using the development. The proposal will achieve 66% reduction in carbon emissions, which is in line with policy. So that is 27% on being lean through fabric efficiency, LED lighting, mechanical and passive ventilation, and 39.5% through renewable energy sources, which includes PVs, which you can see on the screen, and also air source heat pumps. And a carbon offset contribution of £17,470.50 is required to then meet the 100% reduction, which will be secured through a legal agreement. In summary, this scheme would provide a replacement community facility which is supported by the Summit Plan. It's of high architectural design. The impacts on neighbours are minimal, and this is illustrated by the daylight and sunlight report, and the separation distances between the site and the residential properties reduces, and possible overlooking loss of privacy. It's therefore recommended that planning permission is granted subject to conditions and a legal agreement. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions to the officer? Councillor Salmon.
Thank you, Chair. Have they proposed any furniture on the roof terrace yet, or is it just going to be a blank?
There is no furniture proposed on any of the plans, so it's just a blank space.
Just a blank space. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Livingston.
A couple of completely unrelated questions. First of all, do we know from the applicant why they put in this new application, given the previous one had permission?
So that is to do with the viability of building out a bigger scheme. So rather than compromising on like the architectural integrity of the building, they've reduced the footprint and reduced the capacity of the building.
That's very clear. Thank you. And the second question was picking up on the issue of the roof terrace. Is about the restriction in terms of worship, which seems sensible to me, but whether we might also want to consider restricting the numbers of people that are allowed there, because we had that discussion in some previous roof terrace discussions about whether that might be something we want to do as well.
I think it's quite difficult for numbers because of enforcement. Maybe in a informative rather than a condition for numbers.
Chair, I'm not sure it'd be useful to know, perhaps from planning officers, what the expected capacity is of the roof terrace. I think I've seen a figure of 50 people mentioned in the noise assessment report.
Yeah, I think that's why I get the architect to confirm, but yeah.
50 people on the roof terrace seems like a lot to me. Even if not worshipping, it's not just one or two people having a sandwich out there, is it? Yeah.
Is the number 50 mentioned in any of the conditions? And we've put a number in the conditions.
Chair, you will be mindful that what you're trying to do is address any impacts on residential amenity, and therefore you will want to think about restricting any of those uses that you think might be providing or creating disamenity. The suggestion has been that there is a restriction against the use of the roof terrace for public worship, and that also it's within your gift to state what you think the roof terrace could be used for. The planning officer has said as a breakout space for users of the development. Perhaps that needs to be refined further. And also the number restriction as well, if your concern is that if you have 50 capacity on there, that with or without amplification, which is also something you might want to consider, do you want to restrict the use of any kind of amplification on the roof? Those matters are all within your gift, because your condition just has to be necessary, relevant to planning, and enforceable and precise, so that everybody knows what the expectations are of the use of that roof terrace. It's probably just worth reminding you that at the moment the proposed condition simply restricts the hours down to 8 p.m. But in your discussions tonight you might want to consider what else you think would be appropriate.
So would this be additional to condition 18, or would it be part of?
No, condition 18 is just refers to the use hereby permitted, and there are a number of different hours of operation. That would be taken to mean, I would have thought, the internal, potentially the external as well. But 19 is a separate condition that says the use of the roof terrace is not permitted outside of the hours. Now it's that condition which needs to be, or if you consider it needs to be amended to deal with any further restrictions, and also to ensure that it's absolutely clear that there is no conflict with condition 18, because at the moment the way they read is that there's nothing to prevent the roof terrace being used for public gatherings of up to whatever the capacity of the roof terrace is, and for any of the uses permitted by the development, which are public worship and ancillary uses.
I just was wondering, on the objections, the list of examples, there's actually only one that I can see, which is about noise nuisance. So I mean, obviously there are some houses around, but it's already stated that the roof terrace won't be able to be used past 8 p.m. And I just worry about putting too many restrictions on what is, it's a building for worship, where worship potentially won't be allowed on the roof terrace anyway. And yeah, I just kind of wanted to know, on the objection, do you know how many were concerned about noise nuisance?
Well, since we proposed changing the hours of use from 8 to 8, we've received 2 further representations which are concerned about the 8 to 8 hours of use and how many people would be on the roof terrace, and that the impact that would have, particularly for number 95 Peckham Road. So I think the concern is that it would be loud on the roof terrace and that would have an impact on number 95.
Thank you, but there was mainly only 2 concerns about that.
Since we proposed 8 to 8, but there have been other objections since I think the original consultation of the application. Multiple residents, I'm not sure exactly what the numbers of multiple raised concerns about the roof terrace.
Thank you.
Shall we hear from the objector? Oh, Councillor.
Still time for me to
Yeah,
ask. On slide 57, you've got the cross there. You can go to your pavilion. I was curious. Is that part of 90? Is that part of 95? Is that residential property as well?
Number 95, sorry. Number 95 is residential, yes, so that corresponds to this highlighted window here in the red, so it's a roof light platform for windows on the main elevations of that plot.
Because in the objections, it speaks about the blocking of the light, but also says consultation did not include 95 Peckham Road. Curious to know why.
There is an error in the original consultation, so we reconsulted, and number 95 residents did, I think there was 6 or 7 of them from number 95 have responded to the consultation.
And so the next question I was around the external lighting. So in the application, again, it sort of speaks about proposed and objections to this include potential concern for light pollution. I mean, would this lighting be on at night or evening? Is that the proposal? I'm just curious to know what the extent of the light pollution might be.
We've included a condition to provide details of the external lighting, but the hours of use haven't been conditioned for that lighting. So we've asked for additional details in terms of making sure that it meets with the Institute of Lighting Professionals guidance for reducing obstructive light, but we haven't asked for lighting to be turned off at a certain point.
Okay. Would you like to come forward, sir? And just put the desk. The microphone is the single switch. That one.
Right.
So if you can, first of all, just say your name and which road you live in. Don't give us your full address because it's on camera.
My name is Ronald Dunning, so I'm here to represent my fellow residents.
Okay, you have 3 minutes.
Well, first of all, we would be delighted to see the site built on, so that's perhaps a note of approval. But we've all read the online objections from all the local residents, and our objections pretty much accord with all of them. The only we will not be overlooked. We won't lose light because we're across the road on the south side. But aside from that, we would be affected with virtually everything else that will be happening. So we did have some concerns about parking. You have to take their assessment that there would be a very small number of people driving, but once the building is built, of course, it would be too late to correct that. It's hard to believe that so few people will be. That's rooftop terrace, it's useful to have seen the plans now. It could be that the parapet at the front of the building will actually buffer us. In terms of overlooking, that was a concern of my fellow residents, that we would be overlooked from the top of that building. If that's the case, then it would still affect 95 Peckham Road and everyone behind. We were concerned about noise from the rooftop terrace, especially given that I think the word is Pentecostal, like an evangelical church, which the adherents are given to very extravagant expressions of their faith. Speaking as a person with spiritual beliefs myself, I'm certainly in favour of churches, but most of us observe in private, they are given to quite rousing singing. It would be great if all of that was contained within the building and with sufficient soundproofing. Certainly, I was concerned that a lot of the online objections mentioned at 11 p.m. cut-off for the use of the rooftop. I'm glad that you mentioned 8 p.m. But again, we would object if there were services, especially with electric music accompaniments. For us, from the front, again, there was concern of overlooking. It looks to me on the plan that there aren't upper stories internally on the front of the building. It looks like a very large open space, very brightly illuminated. So we wouldn't be overlooked from within the building, but the bright lights
That's
will...
3 minutes,
Sorry?
That's just 3 minutes.
3 minutes. Well, I think you can extrapolate from what I just said.
Chair, can I ask if there's anything more you'd like to say?
Well, to complete that topic, the front of our building will be very brightly lit. There are 4 flats on my side. I live on the front. The light will shine directly into 2 bedrooms and living areas of all 4 flats. I think, given too the concern over light pollution in cities in general, it would be useful to know that the lights could be dimmed quite early in the evening. So that's to complete that. I did have one more point about the site being on a very, if I use the word dangerous, not necessarily a technical term, but in terms of my experience of the road, it's quite a dodgy section of road. If there was more parking and traffic circulation, that would be an issue. I'm also concerned about the bus stop that is directly outside my building. Already, every day, there are people who rashly try to cross the road directly in front. It would take a minute to go to either junction and cross the Pelican or the pedestrian crossing, but people go straight across. Very dangerous. And if bus loads disembark and people expect as a group they can, that's something that really council traffic safety really ought to be considering. It's not so much an inconvenience to us. I think that covers everything.
Councillor Hood?
Can I clarify a couple of points that you said? When it comes to the hours of use for the roof terrace, you mentioned initial figure of midnight or 11 p.m. or whatever it was. The change of that time to 8 p.m., is that something you're satisfied with? And secondly, on the...
I'm now speaking personally, it would make a difference to me. I presume it would to many of the others as well. That's in my building. The next door to me is Kingfisher House, I think, and then Pelican House. We do not have children in our building, but there are families with children in both.
But you would
Still
consider 8
directly
p.m. a
opposite.
reasonable time?
Sorry?
But you would consider 8 p.m. a reasonable time?
I would consider it a useful step.
And the lighting on the outside of the church, just to clarify what you're saying, would you be also seeking an hours of use for that as well? So there would be a cut-off at some point where that would be turned off?
It would be interesting to know how long they propose to leave them on, as a demonstration of the presence of the church, the architecture. If they were meant to be on till midnight, then that would be objectionable, and even earlier.
We can ask the applicant. We can ask the applicant.
Yes, that's something we don't know.
Councillor Livingston.
Thank you. Thank you for coming to talk to us today. I wanted to ask about the parking issue that you raised. We heard earlier that the church is currently using Peckham Academy to worship. So just wanted to understand on a Sunday, which is presumably their peak time for worship, what the situation locally was at the moment with parking for worshippers visiting the church.
Well, I'm not quite sure of the right word. We're an exception, perhaps, to everyone else because we're on the south side of Peckham Road. Parking, we park in Grummet Road, which is the side street next to my building. And I'm very pleased to say that generally parking is just sufficient. We're one street away from what's the name of the school? Anyway, large secondary school. So the school runs morning, and I have to judge my use of my car so that I try to arrive home outside of those hours. That would be a similar problem perhaps with Sunday services. It strikes me that parking is going to be much more of an issue to the roads to the north than to us, but there could be overspill. It depends too on if, with such a prominent church, if they increase their congregation and want to use more minivans, they would have to be parked somewhere during the services. It could be that they would quite like some to park opposite the front of the church, which would mean perhaps coming into the natural first destination would be our street. And so that would add to the layer of difficulty at those times.
I think the minibuses will be parked within the courtyard area, so they shouldn't be on the street.
Yes, it was hard to see that they had, the clergy will also have to park in that area. Whether they've actually allowed sufficient, the bulk of the building takes up most of the site, and we were all skeptical that they had actually allowed enough provision for parking.
Any other questions? Thank you for coming to see us.
Thank you. May I keep this?
Yes,
Thank you.
Do we have the applicant or applicant's agent?
Yes, hello. Thank you, Chair.
If you press the single button, microphone, if you could introduce yourself and who you work for, and then I'll introduce you.
Hello, my name is Andrea
Resfold, and I'm an architect at Turner Jackson Day Associates, representing the applicant, the Church of the Pentecost UK. This application seeks permission for a new place of worship that will provide a 615-seat auditorium and 120 metre square flexible space for the Sunday school and community functions. An extant permission for this site, 97 Peckham Road, has approval for a significantly larger church. The design was subsequently re-evaluated during the pandemic and the operational use of the building reviewed. It was concluded that capacity could be reduced, enabling the provision of a smaller, more efficient and sustainable building. The application makes optimum use of an accessible and underutilised brownfield site and will make a positive contribution to the local community. The church will be of high architectural quality with an elegant and contemporary aesthetic. The dominant glazed corner that will create a dynamic focal point with the wider street scene, together with the dual fronted design, will reactivate Peckham Road street frontage and enhance existing pedestrian connections to Moody Road. Scale and massing have been designed to address the adjacent build context. A progressive step down in scale from the front to the rear creates a transition between the strong and prominent street frontage and the domestic scale of dwellings to the north. The applicant's scheme, in comparison to the extant permission, has a smaller built footprint, a third less floor space, a reduced mass, and has been pulled away from the northern boundary with Crane Street by 5 metres. Subsequently, this proposal is substantially less impactful on neighbouring amenity. An updated daylight and sunlight statement confirms the proposal will have no significant impact. The proposal will provide a high quality and large area of public realm with new trees and landscaping, resulting in a wider pavement and increased permeability. An area of open colonnade running the full length of the public fronting elevations will provide a welcoming and generous space for assembly. The site is in a sustainable location for walking, cycling and public transport with an effective P-tile of 6A. Only 3% of the congregation is expected to arrive in their own vehicle. The travel plan details a package of measures to promote sustainable transport choices, including the provision of 2 14-seater community minibuses with dedicated off-street parking. Any impact on the road network or car parking demand of adjoining roads will therefore be negligible. The development's impact on noise levels will be minimal, with agreed restrictions to opening hours and additional restrictions on the use of the roof terrace, further protecting neighbouring amenity. The building has been designed to achieve the highest environmental performance standards and will utilise sustainable forms of energy such as heat pumps, photovoltaic panels and wind catchers. In summary, the proposal provides a distinctive and dynamic building that will make a positive contribution to the street scene, forms a focal point for the local community and presents no negative impact on the adjacent neighbouring properties. Thank you.
Perfectly timed, thank you. You will have heard people's reservations, especially about the roof terrace and the lighting.
Shall
Can
I take
you address those?
Yes, so the roof terrace, the capacity of 50 was never an intended capacity. I think this comes from some development work we did during the fire strategy, working on absolute worst case scenarios. So, and then that number must have been transferred when we were looking at with other consultants, but they were measuring the worst case scenarios. I mean, that was never intended. The intention is merely for the use of staff and as a breakout space for people using the adjacent room, which is the Sunday school, that can also be made into a flexible community space as well. So it's no overlooking issues. There's 3 parapet walls, a parapet wall on 3 sides of the roof terrace, and then to the north it's set back a good 40 metres plus, I think, from any residential dwellings.
Can you confirm whether there'll be any furniture on there and the intended hours of operation?
I think it will generally be, as I say, used by staff of the Sunday school, so the hours of operation will be typically during the day, like a normal working week. But obviously we'll be happy to take on board any condition for the hours of that.
No furniture? Or furniture?
Nothing's been proposed.
And amplification of any?
No, definitely there won't be anything outside. But
Okay. And the lighting?
yeah, sorry, 1 second. So the lighting was a bit of a feature. We wanted it to appear subtle, but to reveal the shape of the cross, especially during the night when it's obviously more contrast. And to create a bit of a dynamic focal point, so when you see that corner you can see light moving up the main staircase, which is the core entrance. But it's intended to be soft lighting. Obviously we wouldn't want to impact any neighbouring amenity. So this will be, all the comments that we've heard today will be taken into consideration when we develop the lighting scheme at detailed design stage.
Councillor Salmon?
Thank you, Chair. So you mean the only light left will be the one of the cross? Because I was thinking the ones on the ground floor would probably help people exiting, you know, to see where they're going. But those would maybe be switched off when people have gone, and it would just be the cross light that would be left?
Well, it will
Is
be,
that what you mean?
not quite, it will be developed later on as detailed design stage. We haven't actually made those decisions yet, but
Okay.
It's not meant to be a bright light. The images maybe have got the contrast slightly incorrect, but it will just be, as you say, for safety, to light it up so people can get out of the building safely. People passing it will have to get the safety, but we certainly wouldn't want to affect the amenity. So when we're looking at the specification of lighting, we'll make sure that all those things are taken into account.
Thank you.
Councillor Livingston?
Thank you. Yeah, I've got two questions. First question is going back to the roof terrace issue. So thank you very much for the confirmation that you've given us. Would you and the applicant object to us adding to the condition that's proposed about the hours of use to include a condition about no use of amplified music and perhaps restricting the number of people that can be there to perhaps 20? Would that be acceptable, do you think, if we were to agree those?
Yes, certainly. There was never any intention to put anything audio up there. And numbers, yeah, I think that was more in line with what they were thinking anyway.
Thank you. So my second question was on the issue about parking. To understand that there's 2 parking spaces for minibuses that are proposed here. So just really to understand, do you think that 2 would be the maximum that would be used to get there, given the concerns that were raised by the residents?
Yeah, there's been quite a intensive transport plan and transport study done, and I think 89% of the adult congregation responded to the travel survey. And as I said, only 3% of them arrived in their own car. There was a few more that car shared, but that's only 3% of the congregation actually creating a car journey. And the travel plan, or the travel statement, pointed out what the planning officer's already said, that we're just merely moving the church's temporary location to a permanent location 200 metres down the road, so it's going to have negligible impact on the current road traffic.
Yeah, I get that, although I mean the school's got quite good car parking space, hasn't it? So I think it's great that this has got on-site car parking space as well, so I can see how the transfer might well not have an impact on parking spaces locally. But it's just really that question about the minibus spaces, whether you might not be able to answer it, because I realise that you're having to do things on behalf of the applicant themselves who's not here, but whether you had any idea about whether they might be more than 2 minibuses for any...
I mean, based on the current travel survey, they shouldn't, and the travel plan also suggests a package of measures to promote sustainable transport choices, which include a dedicated travel plan coordinator who will do things like marketing, monitoring, on events, when they have larger events, because the capacities we're talking about are not going to happen day in, day out. So when they do have larger events where they're expecting nearer the full capacity, they will have a plan in place before that even begins.
That's very helpful, thank you.
Just on the travel survey, how many people said they will be coming by bicycle? And
I don't think I've got that with me.
because the number of cycle parking spaces is not Southwark compliant, it's only London compliant.
We have discussed the parking spaces, the cycle spaces, and I don't know if you can see on the plan behind you, there's a sort of a compound that was meant for sort of any plant space that may be required, but we've actually found that we can accommodate most of the plant either in the indoor plant room or, that's it, yes, thank you, either in the indoor plant room or on the roof, so we have got ample space in that sort of wall compound to put additional cycle stores in.
Any other questions? Councillor Hood.
Could you tell me the size of the current congregation?
That's a good question, and I should be able to. I think when I've spoken to Reverend Delmar recently, a lot of the congregation are still Zooming in or Skyping in, are still doing it online. So I think I don't have the current figures of who actually attends the church and how many of them are.
Okay. I know that the reason for asking that is because the capacity is about 600 or so, isn't it? Is that the number of people who would regularly be attending?
No, it's not. I'm sorry, I've got the full travel plan has all the details. I think from memory, it's more like 200 will come on a Sunday and even less in the week.
Okay. And just going back to the hours of operation of the roof terrace, how would that be enforced?
How will it be enforced? That's a good question again. I don't know. They could have a community outreach within the church who will be have a dedicated position for that, or a contact that we can. I mean, the church are keen to be a community venue as well as just a church. So hopefully there will be some outreach, and we'll be able to get a contact number to the whole community and they'll know to go to if there is any problems.
Okay. Is there anything we need to put around enforcing the hours of use of the roof terrace? I think in similar cases we've said that there needs to be some sort of warden that enforces this or something like that if it becomes a problem. I don't know if we need to do something like that in this case, or if that would be overzealous if you're part of a religious pub.
Chair, just looking at the wording of existing condition 16, where it's proposed that it's amended to remove the reference to commercial, I wonder if that matter could be covered off in the noise management plan, because that is supposed to cover noise from arrival and dispersal of site users, how noise from community users will be controlled. Perhaps, Chair, members want to think about whether they want to make a specific reference to the access and egress from the roof terrace, if that's where members consider there could be potential disamenity.
Does the people have to go through the sort of Sunday school bit to get to the roof terrace? Or
No, there's a corridor between the. So yeah, you can see it there. There's a corridor between the Sunday school. So they can come straight off the roof terrace and go straight down the main staircase or in the lift.
Councillor Harper?
And it was just that I think Kira had a response to the capacity question.
To answer everyone's question on capacity, the travel survey is 250 people on Sunday and 140 during the week.
Okay. Apologies if I missed that.
Any other questions? Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So there's nobody else in the room who can speak to us, no support for the ward councillor. So we move to any questions or clarification of the officers. Councillor Hood?
I just want to clarify whether on that enforcement of the use of the roof terrace is something we're happy to put in the noise can just put in there, say that's something, just to mention that's something that will need to be included in that plan.
I wouldn't have thought that you would specifically need to refer to enforcement, Chair, because any breach of these conditions in itself brings about enforcement action, because usually the council is notified by residents if, for example, the hours of use are being exceeded, or there's excessive noise, or capacity issues are being exceeded. So it's taken as a given that there will be enforcement action through the council's enforcement team if any of the conditions are breached.
Right, okay.
It's just picking up on the light pollution issue, just to confirm that that would be something that would be discussed between officers and the applicant further on as work moves forward.
Yeah, there's a condition to provide details of light days so that would be discussed when the district commission.
Do we need to put an informative on that? Okay. So do we want to alter condition 19, which is about the hours of operation? We've already changed in the addendum from 8 to 8. Do we want to put on no amplified music?
Chair, I was going to suggest, the applicant seemed happy with the applicant's agent rather seemed happy with the suggestion of no amplified music and restricting numbers to 20. So on that basis, I'd suggest that those two things are added to condition 19.
Everybody happy with that?
I'm not happy with that.
Councillor Halper?
I'm not like unhappy with that. I just think there's a lot of conditions about how noise management plan will kind of be done. I think that would come into it. I take it there isn't any kind of electrical like outlets on the there's no electrical outlets on the roof terrace, and I don't know, it seems like it's a really good scheme which is providing really nice community function on a brownfield site, which I take it would be used for like wider community potentially at times. And given that the roof terrace won't be used after 8 PM anyway, I just feel like it's a bit too restrictive, but that's my view. We do live in a city, after all, so I think that those kind of concerns are addressed by the kind of conditions of compliance, so I would be minded not to add further conditions.
Do we need to take a vote on it?
Chair, as you haven't proposed any motions yet, you might want to propose what you want to propose, and then somebody else could move an amendment to that.
So we don't do the amendments to the conditions until we've got on?
Until you have proposed and seconded a motion, yes. And then afterwards you can somebody can move an amendment that's seconded, and then you vote on that.
So, Chair, we've already established it'll be the Sunday school. Call me old-fashioned, but that happens during the day. They will have 4 occasions in the year when they will go on later at night. Is that what you said? So
the church would operate.
The church would operate, and this is on the 2nd floor, so it'll be used by staff and used by the Sunday school. They didn't seem terribly bothered about the 8 PM because I presume they're not expecting anybody to really be hanging around. They're not really even proposing lighting up there, are you? I mean, it's probably going to be a daytime place with no furniture. I don't know what anyone's going to do with no furniture up there, just wander around. Yes, sorry.
There may be lighting.
There may be lighting.
There may be lighting, and Yeah, and as far as everything else you said, I think that's correct. It's going to be mainly the Sunday school. The Sunday school is 3 rooms that can be opened out to be one flexible space, which is part of where the community can potentially hire that space, and then they might want access to the roof terrace.
And we were saying the condition of no worship would happen on the roof terrace as well. And no smoking? Would it be an area for smoking? Sorry, I just suddenly thought of that. If it's staff using it, no, probably not. No, that's true. That's true. Sorry. You're quite right. Sorry, Jay. You're quite right. Yeah.
It
Yeah.
feels like a long way for anyone to passively
Yes.
inhale.
Yes, get in there. Yeah.
if
So,
there is any
yeah.
using it.
So then there'd be furniture needed. Okay. Yeah. All right. Yeah. I think yes. Maybe we can.
Councillor Hood?
I need to quickly say I agree with Councillors Harper and Salmon. I think it'd be overly restrictive to put the condition in there on music.
Well, shall we vote on the substantive bit first? And then, if anybody's minded to propose an amendment, you can do that. So, find it, please. So, having heard the evidence and there's no more further questions, I'd like to move to the vote. Possible approval. I would like to propose that we agree the officer's recommendation on page 64 of the agenda pack. 1, that the planning permission be granted subject to the conditions set out in the report and the addendum report and the completion of S106 legal agreement. 2, that in the event that the legal agreement is not signed by the 15th of January 2023, the Director of Planning and Growth be authorised to refuse planning permission, if appropriate, for the reasons set out in paragraph 66 of the report. Does anybody wish to second this? Councillor Hood. So is it now proposal?
Yes, to amend the condition 19 further.
Councillor Livingston.
Chair, could I propose an amendment to condition 19 so that firstly the use of the roof terrace is not permitted outside the hours of 8 AM to 8 PM as is in the addendum, but also that no acts of worship take place on the roof terrace, there is no amplified music, and there is a maximum of 20 people allowed at one time.
Does anybody wish to second that? Councillor Batterson, second. Right, we're going to vote.
Sorry, Chair, there is also the amendment to condition 16 to omit the word commercial, which I don't think is in the addendum.
Do we need to vote or propose that as a second different amendment? Shall we do it separately? Are you happy to have that addition? So we add the
Deletion of the word commercial.
Yeah.
16.
Yeah.
Okay. Right, we'll vote. This is just on the amendment first. Okay. Councillor Salmon. For, against, or abstain?
Against.
Councillor Batterson. For, against, or abstain? Councillor Harper. For, against, or abstain? Councillor Hood. For, against, or abstain?
Against.
Councillor Livingston. For, against, or abstain?
For.
And I'm Councillor Witham, and I vote for.
Chair, you now have the casting vote.
So, Not fair. Okay, I vote for.
So now we need to vote on the substantive as amended by this
Okay.
amendment.
So we're voting for, against or abstain the substantive motion, including the amendment. Councillor Salmon, for, against or abstain? Councillor Batterson, for, against or abstain? Councillor Harper, for, against or abstain? Councillor Hood, for, against or abstain? Councillor Livingston, for, against or abstain? And I vote for. So that is carried unanimously. Phew! So we have one other item on the agenda. Can we have just 5 minutes comfort break? Item 7.3, Camber Lawn Tennis Club, Dulwich Common, London, Southwark, SE21 7EX. Application number 2280 2595, pages 105 to 124 of the main agenda pack. There's nothing in the agenda. Winnie?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
So the proposal is to replace the existing floodlighting system for the LED equivalents, including columns and lights at Camberlawn Tennis Club, Dulwich Common. And before introduce further the application, I would like to draw your attention to the paragraph 12 of the officer report. Thanks to Margaret's advice, the paragraph 12 was including the outdated development plan. However, in paragraph 14, the planning policy are the most up-to-date, and it forms the basis of the planning assessment. Therefore, I was advised that verbal clarification will be enough, and it wouldn't affect the planning assessment in terms of relevant planning policy. So, the application site is Camberlawn Tennis Club. It is located on the southern side of Dulwich Common Road. The club provides outdoor sport facilities and other recreational use for member functions. It comprises 3 tennis courts and 1 clubhouse. So you can see that there are 2 tennis courts to the south, outlined in the red line boundary, are the subject of this application. They are set back from the main road and are bounded by Dulwich Common allotment to the west and the cricket ground of Streatham and Marlborough Cricket Club to the east. So this is the site aerial view. As you can see, the 2 tennis courts in subject. The application site is located in Dulwich Wood Conservation Area and is designated as Metropolitan Open Land. And you can see there are several green boundaries that indicate the site of importance for nature conservation, indicating the availability of wildlife corridors in the area. This is the site, existing site photos of the 2 tennis courts. In terms of planning histories, the clubhouse has received several tree-related planning applications. And one of the recent application in relation to the installation of the floodlighting is to the tennis court to the north. It was granted permission in 2011, and because that is of relatively of the modern specification, that's why this is not included in the current proposal for the replacement. So the proposal is to replace the 4 existing floodlights at each tennis court with 6 LED equivalents, including columns and lights. As compared to the existing columns of 8-meter mounting height, the replacement measures 6 meters tall, as you can see on these 2 diagrams, with the base diameters of 168 millimeter and the top diameters of 89 millimeters. It will be finished in green with asymmetrical LED floodlights. If we're going back to this diagram, it will show 3 floodlights will be equal distance on each side of the tennis court in yellow dot, and the blue dots indicate the existing locations of the floodlights. The proposal is essential to upgrade the existing floodlights to the modern specification. The current floodlights dates from 1970s, are aging and providing deteriorating level of lighting by modern standards. It also requires more electricity and more frequent and costly maintenance. During the consultation period, we have received 1 comment in total, and it is in support of the application. The comments refers to the enhancement of the MOL use by improving its suitability for sport and recreation while reducing the club's environmental impact. It is also considered to have negligible or no lighting impact on the adjacent properties, which we will go further in the subsequent slides. In terms of the assessment of proposal, several aspects of the assessment have been broken down as follows. First of all, it is about the principle of development. Because this proposal is for the replacement of the essential function to the sport facilities, although there are 2 more floodlights to each tennis court, it remains in limited footprint, and it is slim in appearance and also features lower height. As a result, it will preserve the openness and the character of the metropolitan open land. As we go on to the noise impacts, because there is already established sports and recreational use on the site, therefore, the change of the floodlight system would not add any greater harm to the amenity in terms of the noise disturbance. As we go on to the ecology and biodiversity, due to the fact that there are already a number of existing sport facilities in the area, and in light of the ambient lighting levels, it is not considered to cause any greater harm to ecology arising from the proposal. So in principle, there is no objection from the ecology team. However, as per the ecology team's advice, the applicants agreed that the new lighting will be switched off at dusk during certain periods of summer, which are the active season for bats. It will help to lessen the cumulative impacts of lighting on emergent bats in the area. So as a result, it will help to deliver positive benefits to the ecology level in the area. Also, in terms of the energy efficiency, it will help to achieve 50% in energy saving as compared to the existing discharge lighting, where each light will consume around 1,500 watts. And the new proposed lighting will only consume 530 watts. Last but not least, we are looking at the light amenity. To assess the light spill to the surrounding area, we will assess it in accordance with the Institute of Lighting Professionals guidance, which is ILP. And ILP guidance notes for the reduction of obtrusive light set a limit of 5 lux in a rural area for exterior lighting control. In support of the application, the applicant has submitted the control ISO contour spill diagrams as these 2 to the left of the slides. And the colored ISO overspill diagram shows the lighting level by colors over the distance from the tennis courts. And you can see on the peripheral, the blue color indicates the lux of 0 to 5. As we are now looking at the aerial map, you can see that the Greenwich Common, its gardens will be 23.5 meters away from the tennis court, and the house will be 60 meters away from the tennis court. So according to the concentric circles of the overspilled diagram we just saw, it will be subject to the obstructive light with a measure of a maximum of 2 lux, which is way below the maximum limit of the 5 lux for rural area as indicated by the ILP. Accordingly, there isn't a noticeable light impact on the nearby dwellings. In conclusion, it is recommended for approval subject to conditions because of the following reasons. First, the principle of development on the MOL is acceptable. Second, it is not considered to harm the openness of the MOL or detract from its character. And also, the external artificial lighting replacement is acceptable and in accordance with the ILP standards. It will also deliver positive benefits for the ecology and wildlife corridors in the area, with reduced operational hours in summer, as it has been secured by Condition 3. Last but not least, it will help to achieve energy saving by achieving 50% energy efficiency with the new LED lighting system. That's it for the proposal.
Thank you very much. Any questions for me? Councillor Robinson.
Just the one. So on slide 73, the plan of the site, am I right in thinking that those houses along Dulwich Common have got some fairly sizable trees at the bottom of their garden, which would provide screening between them and the tennis courts in any way?
Yes, absolutely. As you can see to the rear gardens of the terrace along Dulwich, not terrace, but houses along Dulwich Common, there are rich levels of layers of trees which provide natural screening effect, and also as you can see to the west of the tennis courts, there are also layers of net trees as well. So naturally, it will provide a very good, barrier from the lighting.
Any other questions? Councillor Batson.
It looks like it's more efficient energy, cheaper, better in every way. I'm just curious as to why this has come to a subcommittee.
Because it's on MOL.
Okay. Helpful
I
for my
agree
own
with you. I
understanding.
But yes, in logic, you're absolutely right.
The applicants also explained that because that was installed in 1970s, that's why a lot of components already is difficult to find for the replacement or maintenance. That's why it is also critical for them to try to replace it to a modern standard.
Okay, shall we move to a vote? Yes? Okay. There is absolutely nobody else in the room. Officers and the members, we don't have any objectors, supporters, applicants, or ward councillors. So we'll move to the vote. I would like to propose that we agree the officer's recommendation on page 107 of the agenda pack. Number one, that planning permission be granted subject to the conditions set out in this declaration. Anybody wish to second this? Councillor Livingston will have a yes. All those in favour? Unanimous. And that brings us to the conclusion of tonight's business. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.